Hello everybody, I'm William of IW Studios. Today I'm going to go through the basic step-by-step process of how I do these podcasts. So the podcast is something which I've been doing for 2 years now. The process of how I make these podcasts has definitely evolved and changed over time. At least back when I was trying to look into how to make the podcast, there wasn't really a whole lot of tutorials that really kind of explained how to create a podcast from scratch with little to no equipment. I feel like the actual process of creating a podcast varies between every podcast. It's really something that I find you have to find the process which works best for you, and that definitely does take a lot of time. As of now, the process that I use, it's fairly simple. Once we've arranged the time to record, we all meet up on Google Hangouts, and we simultaneously record our parts of the podcast through Audacity. I also have a backup file of all of our recordings put together. I used to create a unlisted live stream through Google Hangouts in the Hangouts on Air process on YouTube, but they since discontinued that in 2019, so I ended up having to change the way I do that. I dabbled on OBS Studio, which didn't seem to work very well because I only seemed to ever record half of whatever I recorded. So I actually found another method which is not something which I thought would actually work, but actually works really well, and that is basically using Zoom's built-in recording feature. So what I do is I create a meeting with just myself, so the length of time for a meeting with just yourself is actually unlimited, and with that you can actually record stereo mix, which allows me to record a backup file of everyone else's recording. Once I have all the recordings, it's then onto the editing stage, first stage of the editing on Audacity, where I bring all the audio tracks together and cut them simultaneously. This process generally takes roughly 3 to 4 days to complete. What we usually find is that an average episode, which usually takes about 3 hours to record, usually is condensed down to about 2 hours and 20 minutes. So I go through recordings and I cut out any dead silence or bloopers or any technical issues that we may have had. So roughly about 40 minutes worth of the podcast is edited out before it's actually released. So then, once I've fully edited the recordings, I will then export them all separately into separate edited files, and then bring them into Brickfilms, where I then add all the video portions of the podcast. So I've only very recently started to actually add all the files in separately into Brickfilms. I used to just export the entire project, the entire file with all the recordings in one, but I found it's quite useful to be able to actually cut out little individual parts of the recordings that I may have missed out when I was actually doing the Audacity editing. So in the process of adding all of the clips, I create a Google Docs file and add the link of every single video that I include in the podcast, just so that I have a full list of all the films that I can then add in the description. So once all the video portions of the podcast are complete, the entire video is pretty much ready then for release, I'll then export the file, which, seeing as they're very long, generally takes about 3 to 4 hours to fully export, upload to YouTube, and then I bring the completed edited video into Audacity. They're fully edited. I have the plugin on Audacity to convert video into audio. I then export that into a separate audio file, which I then put onto Anchor FM, which then automatically uploads the podcast to all the other streaming platforms such as Spotify and Stitcher and all the various other platforms that the podcast is on. So yeah, that's the basic process of how I make the podcasts. I hope you enjoyed the video. And yeah, I never know how to end videos. Goodbye.